Welcome, I'm Antonina Antusha and you are watching Head to Head with uatv. Following the decommunization policy on Tuesday, Ukrainian parliament has passed the law on improving the procedure of rehabilitation of victims of repression of the communist totalitarian regime. The law has finally removed the enemy mark of thousands of fighters for Ukraine's independence and of innocent people who got hit by the milestones of totalitarian regime during the Soviet period of Ukrainian history. Why do Ukrainians need this law today, and how will it affect the further decommunization of the country? To discuss these issues, we're joined in the studio today by Serhii Riabenko. He is a representative of Ukrainian Institute of National Remembrance. Serhii, hello, and thank you for joining us. So, in general, what does this law mean for Ukraine? What is this law all about?
Speaking about this law in general, I would say that this law means justice. It means justice to all people who fought against the Soviet regime with armor and who are now, according to the current law of Ukraine, who are now still criminals. Though they were fighting for this country, they were fighting for the independence of Ukraine. On the other hand, this law is one of the laws that regulates the procedure of the decommunization, because while we are speaking about the decommunization, it is not just the removing of the markers, of the monuments, of the names of the Soviet totalitarian regimes.
Memorabilia,
yes, from our streets, from our cities, but it is also the procedure of the changing of the mind of our citizens, of their view on these crimes committed during the Soviet time. So, according to this law is also one of the laws that regulates the sphere of the decommunization in Ukraine.
Why now, though? Why 20+ years later?
A very interesting question. To my mind, it was adopted just after 25 years of the existence of independence Ukraine, only because the previous Verkhovna Rada, the previous politicians of Ukraine were not ready to adopt such a radical law and laws that regulates this sphere. Because while we are speaking about the current law on rehabilitation, we should remember that this law was adopted not by the Parliament of Independent Ukraine, but it was adopted during the Soviet time, at the beginning of the 1991. And according to this law, the state, the Ukrainian Socialist Republic, it proclaimed that these repressions that were made by the Soviet regime in the period of 1917-1991 were the repressions of two different types. One of them were legal repressions, and the persons who were legally repressed, they could not be could not get their rehabilitation according to the current law.
Is there even such a thing as a legal repression?
It is very interesting for me. This question is very interesting for me. Why it is so? Because to my mind, this repression of the totalitarian regime, they could not be legal one. But according to the current Soviet post-Soviet law, it is so. It is written so. And nowadays, these changes to this law, they remove this term and they proclaim that all the people who were repressed during the Soviet time under politician, economic, social, and other motives, they should get their rehabilitation.
Okay, the law is about the whole period of the Soviet Union, starting in 1917 and till the end of 1991. But and this whole period is called the totalitarian regime. But there were some harsh moments, if we remember the famines and all of the other things that happened during the Soviet era. Now, are those moments of harsh pressures and harsh repressions, are they somehow marked in this law, or is it all
they are not exactly marked in this law, because such crimes of the communist totalitarian regimes as the crime of genocide, the Great Famine, the Holodomor, the other crimes such as war crimes, crimes of aggression, they are not regulated by this law, but they are regulated by another laws. For example, the so-called law on decommunization, Rehabilitation that was adopted by the Ukrainian parliament in the year 2015, where it was marked that the communist totalitarian regime is the criminal one, though it committed such great crimes as crimes of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and also the crimes of aggression.
Okay, apart from rehabilitation, what can those people count on?
According to this nowadays law, the current law gives some social measures, gives to these people the possibility to, for example, get the justice from the state.
I'm guessing it's not going to be people as people who live through that area. It's probably going to be their relatives.
Not only the relatives, because some part of the people who were repressed during the Soviet time, they are still alive, and nowadays they have the possibility. They have the possibility to
Apart from having their good name restored, is there going to be any monetary compensation?
Sure, okay. But this law that was adopted yesterday by the Verkhovna Rada, it does not change the existing model of this monetary compensation. But the existing monetary compensation, the compensation for the period while some people were put into jail or put into labor camps or put into some psychiatrical institutions and so on and so forth, these people could get the compensation from the state in the form that it is written in the present, in the current law. On the other hand, while during the period of repression, a certain person was repressed as, for example, the member of the bourgeois classes, and the state gets their money, their monies, their, for example, house, their landscapes, and so on. By the pressure, according to the changes to the law on rehabilitation, these people has the possibility to ask for returning all this property to them. Okay. If it is not possible, they should get their monetary compensation from the state.
Okay, what if we're talking about some kind of mansion that was ruined already? Who evaluates the sum of money that needs to be paid for that particular mansion, for example?
So, in general, this monetary compensation should be paid by the local authorities.
I agree, but who comes up with the sum of money? Who evaluates the estate's price?
You see, the Cabinet of Ministers adopted a special methodics during the period of 1992 and 1994. And according to this methodics, it is possible to count what should be the sum of the compensation for these people. It is not so. It is not a justice compensation, because these sums are rather small. But such a methodics exist nowadays.
Who's going to control that those assets are actually turned into the right way, that the money are actually given to the people who need rehabilitation, who file for rehabilitation and repay?
So there are several methods of control for these procedures. First of all, our institutions, the Ukrainian Institute of National Remembrance, gives new functions. We should give some recommendation how to execute this new law. On the other hand, we have another state bodies, such as the prosecutor's office, the police, the deputies of the local city councils, and all these state and municipal bodies should also control this process.
And for the last thing, who actually makes the final decision if the person is fit for the rehabilitation or not?
According to the current law, it is the function of the prosecutor's office. But
so does the person who wants to be rehabilitated files a lawsuit or how does it happen? How does the whole procedure
No, according to the current law, a person should give the list to the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor's office should give the final decision whether the person should be rehabilitated or not. If the prosecutor thinks that this person should not be put in under the procedure of rehabilitation, he gives these files to the court, and the court makes the final decision. But the main problem is that according to the Ukrainian constitution and according to the new law on prosecutor's office, the prosecutor has not such a mechanism and such functions to do so. So this norm cannot be executed according to the current law. As for the changes, the procedure changes very much, because nowadays the final decision should be made by the Special National Commission on Rehabilitation that should be created by our institution, the Ukrainian Institute of National Remembrance, with the representation of many other state bodies, such as the Ombudsman's office, the prosecutor's office, the State Security Service, and so on and so forth.
And for the last question, this law is, of course, it's about memory. It's about memory that Ukrainian society should have about the whole history of Ukraine, even as a part of the Soviet Union. Why is this memory so important for modern Ukrainians?
It is very important for modern Ukrainian because, to my mind, the last result of the decommunization should be the change of the mind. It is one of the methods.
I agree.
It is one of the methods by which we should get this result. And if our citizens they know nothing about this period of Soviet time and about the repressions, then they think that this period was a rather good one. But if they know about all these crimes committed by the Soviet regime, they should change their money and they should think on this period rather objective.
Yeah, because even nowadays we can come across old ladies who are pretty nostalgic about the Soviet era times, and this is not how it should be perceived into the modern society. Do you agree?
Sure, I agree, but to my mind this process is a rather long one, because we could not change the mind of the person by a year and by one certain law.
Well, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for clarifying that to me and our audience. That was Serhii Riabenko from Ukrainian Institute of National Remembrance. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned with UATV.